The European elections are drawing ever nearer and political tensions are rising as a result. Many people in the UK see their vote in this election as a vote on Brexit, for or against. The two main pro-Brexit parties have been campaigning for months now, and have been met with a wave of opposition from the radical left. Unfortunately, the tactics used by the left have become more and more dirty over the last few weeks, and has culminated in this new method of political intimidation by throwing milkshakes on political dissidents. It all started with independent MEP candidate Tommy Robinson, who had a milkshake thrown on him by a young Muslim who'd been accused of assaulting two women. The next day he had another milkshake thrown at him by someone else. The media response was, to say the least, unsympathetic towards Tommy Robinson, with many media outlets criticising him for retaliating and showing sympathy towards his assaulter. I personally don't think his response was unreasonable, as it was in self-defence, and it was reactionary. If you had an unknown substance thrown over you while you weren't paying attention, you'd probably have a similar reaction. What baffles me the most, though, is that the guy who threw the milkshake was left to go free. He wasn't charged or arrested. These are phenomenal double standards, given that the man who threw an egg at Jeremy Corbyn was given a month in prison for what he did. Next on the list of milkshake opponents was Carl Benjamin, the UKIP MEP for South West constituency. Over the course of his South West tour, Mr. Benjamin has had 4 milkshakes thrown at him, 2 of which successfully hit him, and the response from the mainstream media was to treat the whole thing like a massive joke.
These sort of things happen when people are getting attacked in their own.
Now I know what you're thinking, it's just milkshakes. What possible harm could a milkshake do? And I agree, milkshakes by themselves can't do very much harm. What can do harm, though, is when the mainstream media starts endorsing political violence against opponents. All it does is further radicalise people and embolden them to do increasingly heinous things against political opponents. Unsurprisingly, with Carl Benjamin's assaults, there were no prosecutions or charges of any kind. The people were allowed to get off scot-free with having assaulted Carl Benjamin. But just today, there was another milkshake attack, this time directed at Brexit Party MEP candidate Nigel Farage. He had just finished giving a campaign speech when the attack took place. But what's incredible about this incident is that, unlike with the prior ones, the police have intervened and they've arrested the guy who committed the attack. And that only begs the question, why did Nigel Farage's attacker get arrested, but Carl Benjamin and Tommy Robinson's didn't? It's not like the crimes weren't reported to the police just chose not to do anything about it. So why this two-tier legal system? Despite the arrests though, the media still drive this narrative that it's okay to throw milkshakes at people. Why are they doing it? What good will come from radicalising the public? It's my personal view that the media believe they are fighting an unwinnable cause here. All of their arguments have been unsuccessful, and so the only way to defeat the opposition is to silence them, and the only way to silence them is through intimidation. But in the end, all that will happen is that this situation will escalate out of control. As more and more people are radicalised, they will resort to increasingly violent tactics. This has already happened to Tommy Robinson, who recently had eggs and stones thrown at him by the Muslim Defence League in Oldham. Once again, the police did absolutely nothing. And if you think that's as bad as it will ever get, then you have only to look at the case of Pim Fortuyn, who in 2002 was assassinated by a radical left-wing animal rights activist. Pim had received very negative media coverage due to his outspoken stance on multiculturalism and Islam, with many in the mainstream media calling him far-right, despite the fact that he was an open homosexual and was an open supporter of LGBT rights. When interrogated, the assassin stated that the reason he did what he did was because he felt Pym was using Muslims as scapegoats. This is a prime example of how the narrative pushed by the mainstream media can radicalize someone to the point of committing a heinous crime like an assassination. So if the media feel that they have any sense of responsibility in the modern political climate, they should stop doing this right now. Start reporting things objectively, and stop supporting violence against your political opponents. The police also need to start enforcing the law equally, regardless of who the violence is happening to. You can't just ignore some crimes and not others. I also see that Nigel Farage has called for the man who threw the milkshake at him to be charged. What I feel would be really great is if he could go one step further and state that the people who assaulted Carl Benjamin and Tommy Robinson should also be charged for their crime. It would really make me regain my trust in him, as it would show that he has consistent moral standards that he holds for everybody. But unfortunately, I don't think he will. In the meantime, all that the centrists and the moderate right can do is continue to promote civil discourse. If the general public can get the impression that the fringe wackaloons on the left have gone off the rails completely, while the moderate centrists and right-wing remain consistent and civil, then more and more people may start to disavow the left and its intimidation tactics.
Hey, 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 hey!
I'm convinced. That's a very convincing argument, sir.